recording. I'm not going to go over that again. I think Allison's not here, and I'm happy to go over with the what she missed personally. So I'm beginning the recording now. I was in the middle of talking about privacy and confidentiality measures. Marilee, did you want to say something?
No, I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
Okay. So the second group of information is real-time information, and we're not really going to be able to aggregate that so much, right? It doesn't make any sense to have an aggregated pressure across houses because we're looking at real-time data and the occurrence of events. So those are simply going to have to be de-identified, and they'll be carried forward with us, de-identified. And what we've written in the consent form is these data could be used to infer how you operate your house, but that will not be associated with you in any public or even often among the team kind of way. So the last thing, which I haven't figured out how to do, is what we raised before about hazardous conditions that we may run across. Taylor has done some looking, and we are mandatory reporters for observations of abuse. So everyone should know that. But we're not clear on hazardous conditions like you have mold or you have a radon problem. We won't be able to tell a radon problem, but those are some examples. And so that is a thing that we have not moved forward on. It doesn't mean that we're going to drop it. But we haven't resolved how we're going to handle that. I believe one of the things we should do is identify on the consent form. If we find things, we need to report them to you so they know that. Beyond that, though, I haven't figured out how to handle those things. So that's pretty much the summary. Just curious if anyone has comments, questions, things that have been missed, things we should consider differently.
Would it be helpful to dig up hazardous condition form from previous project?
It probably would, and we would probably use it. What is not clear to me is what qualifies as a hazardous condition that we might run into. What do we have to report to people? And then what liability does that place on them for reporting it to others?
Yeah, you've got to be really careful about things that have that kind of disclosure. But there are some things that I think we would have a lot of liability if we did not tell them about. So
I would like the team's help on identifying those conditions clearly for people who are in the field. Because I think we want to be very consistent about it. And yeah, so for example, if they have a recirculating range hood and it's creating hazardous conditions when they fry hamburgers, is that something we should disclose?
that example, I would say no, because most people don't look at that as a hazardous condition. We just know enough to know that it is.
Yeah, but we know.
On the other hand, if the field folks show up at a house and they see evidence that a water heater is not drafting properly and evidence that there's a lot of carbon monoxide, yeah, we've got an obligation to tell people.
So I think then we should, it would be very helpful for me to have a list of things that need to be disclosed. And then we should warn people that that is a possibility that those will be disclosed. So if you already have such a list, Paul, I'd be very grateful to see it, because part of the reason this is last is because I realize I'm going to have to sort through all those conditions and I'm not sure how to make the calls.
I can help with that.
Thanks. Anyone else want to comment on other things we should consider? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. If you think of something or you observe something, please be sure to bring it forward. We want to make sure that the people who have graciously let us into their homes are as protected as possible. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next thing if no one wants to comment. So this is more of a free form discussion. I do not have bullet points, nor did I ask anyone to make a presentation. Dom, Will, and Misa, and to some extent Paul, have all been in the field. Me too. And we have now placed our equipment in 7 homes, and it has been removed from 3 homes. And this is not counting my home as the test and Will's home as the second test. So we're running 4 homes right now. Our goal was 10. So we may not get there. We won't get there before the end of the year, but we're not as far behind on that particular thing as might happen. And we keep saying we need to have a debrief on all those procedures. And we keep not scheduling it because we're too busy getting ready. So I thought we could do it here in the team so that the rest of the people on the team, even if they're not in the field, can hear the kinds of things we're dealing with. This also brings to mind some things for our proposed field experiment, where we had said we're going to do 16 homes, we're going to run them for 16 weeks, and they're all going to be running simultaneously. Well, that was dumb because we can't install, like, it'll take us 8 days to install 16 homes. So and that is if we work without a break and et cetera, et cetera. We are getting better. So maybe let's just start with people who have been in the field, things that you observe that are going well. We'll be sure to inform the rest of the team about things that we've added, like learned as we go on. They may be becoming second nature to you now, which is great. But let's tell the rest of the team what we're seeing so we can kind of, we can't bring everyone to the field, but let's try to bring them a little bit to the field today.
Yeah, I can start with a little something. I think, especially recently, what I've seen is kind of the increased efficiency with our sequencing. It's still not perfect, but I know when we first started, I personally didn't really give it much thought. The sequence of what kind of tests we're going to be doing, which things need to be installed when. So I think giving more insight or thinking about that more in depth has really given us a lot of saved us a lot of time and visits to homes so far. I don't know if Will, you look like you're nodding your head, so it seems like you agree as well, but yeah.
Yeah, I think what we've been doing in the field has been going well. Like, I think that we, at least I have learned something at each site with how we're doing things. So I think even if we're making mistakes, as long as we're learning something at each site, to me, that's a good thing because that's a lesson we can take to the next home. I know one thing that we've noticed, and this is typical, I guess, for residential areas, if you're not in some like one of those cookie cutter neighborhoods, but how different a lot of the homes are. They do have some of these same little things, like we were talking about it yesterday, this very popular splitting of levels, I guess, that we see a lot in homes. But each home is so different, which, it's kind of hard we can't exactly always take that same plan from home A to home B to home C. Now, we know that there's a list of things we need to do. There's somewhat of an order we need to do them in, but based on the home and, you know, the questions we have about it, the way it's set up, the limitations on where we can put equipment, that, you know, these kind of things can slow us down. But so far, all of the homeowners and I think one or two renters have been, they work with us. You know, people always say, well, what do you want? I'm like, well, no, what do you want? Where do you want this piece of equipment? Because, you're the one, you're going to be living with it for the next 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. So I think that, I think we have a pretty good rapport with the homeowners. I've also been interacting with them for about a year now already before we started with the Sapphire stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about Dom and Misa, but just kind of, even though these homes are so different, if we see something unique at one home, sometimes we can kind of apply it and kind of inform a decision we might make at a home when we see something similar. But yeah, it's so hard to, none of the homes are the same, so.
You want to say anything, Misa? You haven't been doing them quite as long as the other folks, but maybe your perspective as a new person trying to come in will be instructive as well.
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning process. But as Dom and Will have mentioned, it's very trial and error as well. Not everything goes perfect the way that we expect them to, but it's also like we do apply what we get from every house to the next house. And so it definitely has increased our efficiency. We've actually been kind of meeting within the time frame that we're actually telling them we'll complete things by. As opposed to like the first few houses that we kind of went a little over. We had to do other visits and stuff like that. Again, it's still early on in the process, and we're just still picking up a few tactics to keep increasing that efficiency. Yeah.
It's a good point. I was complaining a little yesterday that we were going overtime, but I also realized that the frequency of return visits has decreased. Like we didn't quite get this done, so we need to go back tomorrow. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest part of that in terms of like sequencing was trying to push the manometer placement and the installation as early in the process as possible, just because even though we have streamlined the process, it's still, no matter how we whatever shake it, it's going to be the longest portion of our setup. So I think in terms of that, since more recently I've been taking more of a role in that placement, I think I need to do a little bit better job of kind of scanning the home beforehand, whether that's through Zillow or whatever it is, trying to get some idea before we are even in there of where we want to place. I think that will help us a lot with our time, because I find myself spending probably at least the first hour just scoping out the house and figuring out what idiosyncrasies each one has. So yeah, I think overall that would benefit us all.
When we're
So
talking about,
go ahead, Will.
we're talking about decreasing those return visits. I thought we were doing so well. I almost felt like, the first home was going to have to start charging us rent. We were there so much, but, we were learning so much of that house. And then we were in this good place. And then my schedule got kind of messed up. So we had to do that return visit for Tuesday, but that was really quick. But I mean, I don't think for yesterday, I don't think we're going to have to make a return visit for that one. It's just going to be the teardown, right? So, I mean, I think that we did pretty well, and I think that's good too, because the houses seem like they're just getting bigger and bigger. So, but I think being able to make the decisions, like you said, Dom, and then really Misa being another person in the field has really helped to kind of like split up duties and delegate different things. And that's what I was telling Dom at first, like, hey, like say you do this, you do that. You like somebody's got to be the head chef in the kitchen and just kind of tell everybody what to do. And then, we reevaluate at a certain time and say, all right, well, how much time do we got? It's like, okay, we got an hour left. Like, where are we at? We got 2 hours left, or however we want to do it. So yeah, big hand to the group for not having to do a return visit to the home for yesterday. So
Oh, can I just throw out that we're supposed to quiet the manometers? So maybe. Let me tell
oh
yeah, let me tell the rest of the team a couple of things, three things. One regarding manometers, and one regarding things that have been added, and one things that we are not getting. So the manometers, you've heard us complain about them. For the non-technical folks, manometers are the devices that measure pressure across a wall from the indoors to the outdoors. And we agonized a fair bit about whether to put those, what we call taps, they're just little tubes, through a window and then tape off the window, or to drill a hole through the wall. We've now gone nearly exclusively to drilling through the walls because many occupants like to be able to open their windows, and they don't seem to care tremendously much about drilling through the wall as long as we patch it. Dom made a fantastic discovery that getting just a little bigger drill bit made it much easier to get that tap through the wall. In the beginning, we were spending quite a long time with fishing. It's surprising how one hole doesn't line up with another hole. So I think that's gotten much smoother. Would you say, Dom? So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm spending a fraction of the time on it now. So
good work on reducing your suffering there. We don't have as much experience with patching the holes and matching the paint. There's been some things that we need to work on there, but we're getting procedures down for that. It is surprising how many people think they have paint, and then it turns out to be a giant cake of unusable material that should go to the hazardous waste dump. So that's a thing that we're dealing with. But so overall, we are putting in 3 manometers per house, and this will be relevant to something that comes later. We're putting one low and one high to get the stack effect. And then across from the high one, we're putting one on the other side of the house to get the wind effect. And that's some sort of optimal, like a small number of manometers that can capture the major effects. And so that's relevant to one of the things that we thought we were going to do that I think we're not really getting around to doing. Ellison's work had showed that if a zone differed, and she had air quality monitors in the home and outside the home, and she had several in the home, and she would look at how they differed. Her work showed that if a zone differed in terms of its concentrations, it was typically the master bedroom, which makes sense because people might do stuff in there or generate material or have it closed off. And so our original plan had been to do a 2-zone monitoring and also measure the pressure across the master bedroom door so we could try to do 2 zones in a house. We are not getting there. And part of the reason is we would need another manometer to measure that pressure. So sometimes the air quality monitor is going in the master bedroom, but my guess is we're not going to be able to confirm 2 zones with the house or with the work that we're doing on Epic Homes.
I also think kind of the considerations we've made has kind of been at odds with that. I know when we're doing the manometer placement, one of the main things we try and avoid is having a manometer in the bedroom, just because of the noise that it can make, the inconvenience if we're going through a window or whatever. So I think, yeah, it almost seems to be at odds with kind of what we've been trying to do the whole time. I know that was an idea that we had at the beginning, but yeah, it seems, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, Don. We could place it outside of the master bedroom and still measure across the door, but we would probably need a 4th manometer. because of considerations of one, what you're drilling through, like we don't want to drill through if it's brick on the outside, and what is available inside, there typically aren't very many good places to put the manometers. Like we're getting the three best, and then the fourth would be significantly worse, I would say, right? and so it becomes difficult to add. But in addition, we currently don't have enough equipment. That is not the major limiting factor. If I thought we'd do a great job at 2-zone air exchange, then I would just go get those other manometers. Another thing, though, is that I was hoping we'd see more variation in events outdoors that we could see coming indoors. And what we are seeing a lot of is indoor generation, which we knew would happen. We were going to screen those out. But I think that the number of outdoor events that we're seeing is low enough that we'll be lucky to interpret the outdoors coming in, let alone outdoors coming in and getting between, distributing among a second zone. So that is a thing that's not happening. Now, to be fair, our look at the data has been quite limited because I think most of Dom's time has been downloading data from the houses, making sure that everything's running. And so we're looking at pressures, we're seeing them, that they are there, and that the stack pressure is kind of okay, and that we have wind data and you can see the wind. But investigation into or deep investigation into phenomena going on inside these houses is limited, shall we say, right now.
I toss one piece in real quick. Don't want to do it real, but just a note for us to kind of go back to in the future. Part of the work Carson has been doing is mining historical data where we have paired indoor and outdoor. So it'd be interesting to kind of sync these two groups up, and what are the cases that we think we have identified that an outdoor event probably led to indoor. Yeah, I don't want to derail the conversation, but just a mental pin for us to go back to at a future.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's a house where we don't have outdoor data, right, Dom?
The very first one, 231, is the only one that doesn't have, and we didn't have an outdoor Omni. So that would be the only one that didn't have a pair, but everyone else should.
But after that, knowing how important it could be for your work, Christian, I insisted that it had to happen. So things that we have added, and so Paul may be the only person who isn't surprised at how informative the pressure data are, but when you can see individual fans and openings and so on in the real-time data, we've added more diagnostics to the initial and final visits. And those are one, we run each fan in the home for 5 minutes without anything else running, so we can see how that fan affects the home. That does take a while. That's added time. So if you've got 3 fans and the central air handler and the kitchen fan, it's an hour, right? So it's significant. The other thing that we've added is a blower door diagnostic. So we were always doing a blower door on the home. Paul has some clever magic way known only to contractors for identifying leakage between the home and a basement or buffer space. And so we've been adding a couple of those. So those don't add a lot of time. They add some thinking time as we have to choose what to do and add those to the blower door tests. The blower door is relatively quick. It's kind of automated, but it adds a little time, but we're hoping that it adds something. So because the pressure data have been good, we're hoping that we have more diagnostic power on exactly what is going on in the homes, but we are not getting the second zone. So it's a bit of a detour, not detour, but we're leveraging what we think we will learn from and not what we think we mightn't learn from or will just confuse us. You guys want to field team, you want to add anything to that? Or Paul, you want to say anything about it?
Well, there's one thing I'll say is, as much as I think the pressures tell us, I think if we did want to try to identify like when when a bedroom was closed or when the second zone was really separated, pressure is not the tool to use for that. There's a different way I would go about doing that.
Do
And
tell.
so what we've used for door positioning is you have something that's like a two-part logger. You put one on the door and one on the door frame, and they can sense each other like a magnet, and so it's essentially a state locker. And so when the door is open, it says, "Oh, it's opened," and then when it comes closed, it says, "Oh, we have an event that's closed," and has a timestamp. The reason pressures aren't good is because really where you see a big difference in pressures between zones is when you have something like the furnace on, but the furnace isn't always on. You can have no real difference in pressure between the two zones, but because the door is closed, all of what's being generated in that room doesn't get out.
Fair.
So if we wanted to start doing that, it's one more hobo. I was just looking for it. I haven't yet found it on their website, but it's one more hobo, not terribly expensive, and doesn't take very long to install. So yeah.
That might be a good thing to do. I was thinking that the type of pressure imbalance that you described would be instructive, but I suppose that's the kind of thing we could get with a fan test or with the central air handler test with that door open and closed, and then not have to measure the pressure.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I will continue to try to figure out what that logger is that we've used. Still not finding it, but it can be a little bit tricky. It can be, okay, we didn't get them quite right, and so we don't pick it up. But with care, you can be pretty good about it.
Yeah, and I think it'll be nice, because we're probably going to pull one house before the holidays, but we're not going to do any others. So we have now a little bit of time to dig into the data, because a question for me is, what are we seeing? What signals of particulate matter and other pollutants do we have that we're able to even interpret? Like, are the signals even high enough and clear enough to try to interpret? So the door logger, I think, would be a low cost thing that we could do, but I am suspecting, based on my quick look at indoor and outdoor concentrations, that we're not going to see something significant between the two zones that would indicate a difference in outdoor penetration to two different zones. So that's where we're at on that. I think the team has just worked really, really well. There's been that let's say complaining, because you're not really complainers, but people are dedicated to achieving quality and going back when they have to, and recognizing the importance of the work, which you don't always guarantee with field technicians. So and the data look pretty good, right? And by good, I don't mean we can match it. I just mean that they don't have like huge gaps. They are reasonable magnitudes, right? So yeah, so I think I feel like it's more work than expected, but it's going reasonably well. Any questions from the
Tammy,
rest of
oh,
the?
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
You had said we potentially would take down one of the homes before the holidays, but is that be 227, 234? Would it be one of those two?
I don't, it's one that we. Yeah, I don't know. I'll defer to you guys on scheduling. It's one that would meet its 4 weeks after Thanksgiving and before the holidays. And so
Okay.
that, I'll leave that up to you. I'm not saying we must do that. I am saying that's a thing that may happen. We may have a house. I will not say we have no houses.
I
So
see. I see.
234 will be at 4 weeks on the 21st. It'll be at 6 weeks on the 5th.
That's probably the one I was thinking of. So, non-diagnostic team members, communication team members, this is all not really your wheelhouse, but is there anything that you've heard that, that you wonder about? Like, what the heck are you talking about anyway, kind of thing?
I just have one question. I'm curious about, as a homeowner, like, are they real curious about, like, do they follow you around? Do they just say, yeah, go do what you have to do? I'm just kind of curious, like, what you notice about their behavior while you're putting everything together.
I think with these homes, because they're basically rolling over from one project to another, they have already some familiarity, especially with some of the equipment and stuff like that. Even the blower door test was part of the start of the Epic homes. So I think for the most part, it's unique that they kind of already know what's going on. It's like, oh no, you know what you're doing, do your thing or whatever. But we are doing some new things that we didn't do in the Epic homes. So, people are very interested in anything they haven't seen before. They are very interested. So I think that our group makes them very comfortable to ask us questions. I always tell them we're happy to nerd out about all this stuff, like it's nice to educate them on what's going on. But I think one of the most engaging things I've heard from multiple homes is they actually are curious to see how the data compares, especially with the blower door test, to what it was when they first did it, because many of the homes did do home energy like efficiency upgrades in between this time. So they are pretty interested, and we have a few scientists or retired academics who are also interested in the data and stuff like that. And Dr. Carter and I also provided them with like a bit of a home summer report that had some data that we shared with them before. So they also have some familiarity there with kind of what they saw from some of the stuff. But for the most part, they just let us do our thing. And, they will ask some specific questions, which of course we're happy to answer. But I would say I've definitely haven't seen any like hesitation or like, oh, we don't want to do that. So I think that's good, because I have run into that with another project before. So
Thanks. I just was wondering about that. I mean, they're letting you drill a hole in their wall, things like that. It's like, it's pretty good trust.
I was surprised that fewer people, or so few people, complained about it. And I think we are planning to do a debrief from them. I think it might have even been you, Marilee, that mentioned you might want to know the frequency of different conditions. And so I tend to let people know that that's going to take a while, like months, but once we have the data on their home, we'll share that sort of thing with them and schedule a time, maybe by Zoom, where we can talk to them, show them what we found, and let them ask questions about their home.
Yeah, that sounds good to bring it back around to them. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I with the first one, I tried to get something ready, and it's just not, it's not going to be of the quality that we want to present. And it would seem rushed, and I might even say things that would cause them to worry that 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 we shouldn't say until later. So so that they know that'll be delayed, but I think we should set a time goal to respond to them and share with them. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We're off next week, so have a great break. And appreciate all your input and continued interest.
Put that logger into the chat.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good
Have a good
holiday.
break.
Have a great holiday.